This is the NEEWER FS60B. It's a 60 watt bicolored cob light weighing only 300 grams and fits in your pocket. With such a compact form factor, it really is a great tool for wedding videographers and content creators who's in need of packing a light. But is the 60 watt of power enough? That's one of the things I'm covering in this video. The light can be adjusted from 2700 Kelvin all the way up to 6500 Kelvin, letting you simulate everything from early sunrise and household light bulbs to the natural sunlight and up to overcast daylight. The light also has 12 scene effects, allowing you to simulate everything from flickering of a TV screen, fireworks, lighting, flashes, and more. Some other lights, which are this compact, tend to either be too weak to really do anything useful, or they end up needing a big power supply that defeats the whole purpose of having a small light in the first place. So I'm currently using the NEEWER FS60B as a Keylight paired with one of their 55cm softboxes. And even though it's double diffused inside of this softbox with a grid, I kept it at 70% and I kept the camera and the light at 5600 Kelvin. The tube light behind me is set to 6500 Kelvin, which is the most that this one can go, so that you can see the type of color contrast you can get if you're forced to keep your key at 5600 Kelvin. And the reason why I'm using 5600 Kelvin in this instance is because I also have a 100 watt light fixture as my fill light to avoid to have too many shadows in the background. Since my filler light is not a bicolor light, I'm forced to match the NEEWER FS60B to that one. So if I were to turn off the filler light and instead set my lights and the camera to 2700 Kelvin, you'd see a bigger difference in the color contrast, as well as of course the actual lighting contrasts, as I'm no longer using a filler in the background. So if I were to have two of these NEEWER FS60Bs instead of just one, it would let me keep my key light at 6500 Kelvin to create the contrasts with the blue in the back, while still having the fill light of the shadows, which I could also set to 2700 Kelvin. Since this light is 60 watts, it generally has enough power for my wedding videography requirements and should be able to fill a dance floor, especially if you were to connect the reflector. The main feature that has me reaching for this light over my bigger lights is, however, the fact that it can be powered using USB-C, so that I no longer have to bring my big EcoFlow power to power the lights. It does not have a built-in battery, however, so you'll need to have it plugged in to whatever power source you're using, either if that's USB-C or the DC cable which is provided in the box. You can also purchase one of their proprietary battery handles, but I have a solution which I think work even better. You see, one of the best features of this light is the fact that it has multiple Q20 connection points, making you be able to choose which of the sides you want to mount it to a light stand. The other connection points can then still be used for accessories like a grip or a place to mount a battery. So I've been using NEEWER stuff for quite a while, and I actually already owned one of their cold shoe adapters, which could be screwed onto the side of the light, and then you could use SSD holder, which you can then slide into the cold shoe, and it can hold a V-mount battery or a power bank. In my case, my power bank is a bit too wide, so I would then use a phone mount instead. So another great feature is the fact that this light has a wireless connection to your phone. So you can use their app to control the brightness, special effects, and even color temperatures of the light, making these types of adjustments easy without needing to dismount the light from the light stand, etc. For speeches, the Reflector Dish does a great job to get as much power as possible beamed at your target. And if the light that is created is a bit too harsh, you can diffuse it using the diffuser, which is included in the box. So obviously a small diffuser like this won't soften it as much as a big softbox would, but when the situation calls for a small and flexible light, this is kind of the way to go. So this light is 60 watts, and that gives you a rough idea of how much light it produces. A lower wattage will also let you run your lights on power banks and batteries for much longer than a light with a higher wattage. For instance, now I ran this 60 watt light over 1 hour and 10 minutes on a V-mount battery which is 99 watts. And even though a higher wattage light generally will also produce a higher lighting output, a lot of power banks, batteries, and USB-C cables also have their own limitations on how much power they can draw, where you typically tend to max out at around 100 watts, making a 60 watt light like this one very easy to light using your already acquired cables, power banks, and V-mount batteries. The actual overall brightness levels is not only determined by the amount of wattage, but instead it differentiates between the LED efficiency, the reflector design, the optical systems, and even the type of design of the light. So when you're comparing the brightness of a light, I much more prefer the lux measurements. So the NEEWER FS60B advertises a whopping 34,000 lux at 1 meter distance with the use of a reflector. To put this into perspective, this is twice as much power as my 100 watt lights and even 65% more powerful than my 120 watt light. So since my 120 watt light also is about 3 times as heavy, has twice the power draw, and doesn't even have an option to be powered using a USB-C cable, I really need to test this out. So at 6500 Kelvin with a 1 meter distance, my light meter measured 29,900 lux. My 100 watt light fixture though only managed 14,250 lux with its provider Reflector Dish. But this could be improved to 19,400 lux with using a bigger reflector dish from AliExpress like this one. So for my testing, this 60 watt light punches brighter in a centralized beam than one of my other small 100 watt light fixtures. I also tested it against a 120 watt light fixture, which was paired with a bigger reflector, and it reached 34,700 lux. I also have the more bulkier Amaran 100D, which with the same reflector managed to reach 45,000 lux. But this, however, is a daylight only fixture, so the fact that my 60 watt NEEWER light managed to reach nearly what the Amaran 100D manages is quite impressive. One thing I really like though is the fact that NEEWER includes both the reflector dish and the cup diffuser in the box, as buying those separately is always a hit or miss, while of course driving up the price of what you actually end up paying for. This light does come with a power brick, but I would retire that instantly since a 100 watt USB-C cable makes much more sense for traveling. And those can be cheaply bought off AliExpress or even IKEA. And even though NEEWER did send me this light and the softbox free of charge, they don't have anything to say in the content of this video other than the fact that they wanted me to specify its features, which is all also laid out on their website. The biggest opportunity in my eyes is probably the lack of a wireless power solution. You should, however, understand that internal batteries would increase the cost of the unit and eventually also be the first thing that ages badly over time. So in my eyes, a more fitting improvement would be an MPF or V-mount battery mount onto the unit, since the 60 watt works so great with external batteries. But again, the multiple mounting points help compensate for that. The 1/4-20 screw holes is, however, not with locating pins, which would help secure the accessories much better to the body of the light. Another drawback of the light is of course also its proprietary mini mount instead of using the traditional Bowens mount. This is something you'll see on all of these type of smaller form factor lights, however, where you need to get up to the bigger dimensions of the lights like the NEEWER HS200 if you want a full-sized Bowens mount. Luckily, however, NEEWER has a selection of softbox and lantern diffusers for their mini mount as well, but more importantly, they have a mounting bracket which adapts their mini mounts into Bowens mount, letting you use all kinds of bigger diffusers like their parabolic softboxes, lanterns, and much more. So I got the 55 centimeter softbox from them, but they also have everything up to 120 centimeters, so you'll easily find one that fits your needs. The softbox came with a honeycomb grid, and even while with the both diffusing layers and the grid attached, it can be folded nicely together to fit into their carry bag. The ribs of the softbox also seems to be of a durable nylon material, which should withhold a lot of heavy use and can be set up in seconds. Overall though, I think this light makes a lot of sense, especially for wedding filmmakers, content creators, or even people who tend to rent out their gear. Like I've had my other smaller lights rented out for about a year now, and even though it's only been rented out like 5 or 6 times, I've been actively using them myself throughout that time as well. And if I were to only charge $10 per rental, I would have already made back half of the cost of these lights at that point. Anyways, thanks for watching, and if you're interested in these lights, please check out the affiliate links in the description below, as it gives me a little kickback where at no extra cost to you. I've also got more review videos and BTS content coming up, so consider subscribing if that's something you're into. Have a good one.